And we're back. Sorry about that. Let me just check that there's not still a stream running with a bunch of other people in it. Because I had to shut the stream down. Reason being that I took my computer apart this morning and neglected to check that the sound card was running when we got it back up again, so we should be good to go now. We're having some slightly obnoxious funk music on in the background today, because why not? Let me just make sure that old stream is hidden. Thanks to the folks who just dropped in. Yeah, today I'm just going to be refactoring some code, really. So feel free to hang out, talk about game dev, ask me any questions about the game. Don't ask me boring questions that can be easily Googled. I'm not into those. Yeah, feel free to hang out, chat about what you want, within reason. And I am just going to be getting on with some stuff I need to do in the game and kind of thinking out loud about it. So, yeah. Sorry about that. Bit flustered. Basically, computer being annoying, making horrible noises. Took it all apart and replaced the PSU, cleaned out the fans and stuff, and was very happy that I got everything working without destroying anything. And then just realized that the front panel where the USBs plug in, which is what my sound card is plugged into, that was plugged into the wrong part of the motherboard, so I had to go in and tweak that. Just find something a little bit more ambient music wise. As fun as this is. Yeah, there we go. That's the sort of vibe we want today. So, giant cartoon bomb. Just to make sure you understand that giant cartoon bombs are important, but not what we're focused on today. We're going to be refactoring some mobs. And shout out to Gleb, my co-developer, who spends a chunk of time, most months, working on this game, has just been recreating our build menu to use cards. I'm just going to download that so we can watch the video of it. Look. This is what Gleb's been working on. Just makes it a little bit easier for players to understand the system that's being used, because you're kind of, you know, you're building rooms, but it's from a deck, and up to this point, the game hasn't really acknowledged that in terms of the way that the interface is designed, so we're kind of just going back to basics a little bit on this, but Gleb's been doing some whizzy 3D stuff, and I've drawn a back to go on these cards. That's not currently in the game yet, though. What I am trying to do today is, we've got a load of creatures in the game, and I've started to make a more generic system for mobs. Hey, Brainoid. So I've got this parent mob that kind of does everything a mob needs to do. And then here are the creatures underneath it in the hierarchy. We've got a key dragon, which is like a little flying key that flies into doors and turns them into bad stuff. We've got an egg bat, we've got a myconid, a loot troll, a rat, and a beetle. But there's a bunch of other stuff in the game that was like prototype mods that don't really fall into this system yet, and I need to start sort of converting them across. And as I do that, I'll probably realize there's other stuff in the mob system that needs a bit of a tweak, so we're going to kind of discover that as we go. I'm just going to go and get my controller, because I can't playtest my own game without it. Yeah, so the kind of big picture with this game at the moment is that our plan that I've discussed with Gleb is in a couple of months' time, we're going to put a new playtest up that people will be able to access and play, and that will be through Steam. So we're leaving the old itch version of the game up as kind of like a historical document for people that want to go and look at the old Dirt World alpha prototype, but we've not been updating that. And one of the reasons is that the app now has all the plumbing for the Steam backend for things like achievements and, well, specifically the leaderboards and stuff like that. And to kind of decouple that and make an itch version will be more work. So we're going to leave that alone for now. In a couple of months, we're going to have a kind of beta ready. And what we want that to be is basically a run of the game that sort of shows you what the game will be like when you've been playing it for a while. And what that won't include is the meta game, the upgrading loop. So you'll be able to play runs, check out all of the rooms, or most of the rooms, whatever we've built by that stage, check out most of the relics, because none of that will be locked, right? There'll be nothing that's gated or hidden away from you in that version. And then you can finish a run and your kind of gold total can go into a high scoreboard. So all of that will be working before we do the next playtest. And that will be when we try and get like bigger numbers of people playtesting it. And then after that point, we'll add in the kind of meta game, which has been planned. I know what it will look like. I know what most of the components of that will be. But it will be like a kind of Vampire Survivors, loads of things to upgrade with your coins that make make the game kind of incrementally easier for you to do better at, and sort of unlock more opportunities to use the fun stuff in the game. But the next playtest will have most of that unlocked. So for example, all of the relics that are built so far will be unlocked in that playtest. And then in the full version of the game, they'll be locked and there'll be something you have to earn by kind of like grinding through the metagame progression. That's the kind of loose thinking. So I'll just give the game a little play so anyone who's totally new can kind of see where we're at. I'm sort of doing what I usually do and bouncing back and forth between stuff that's like important for the game and stuff that's completely superfluous. So I don't know if you can hear that, but I recently added in footsteps. So we kind of check which frame of animation we're on, or which one we've just transitioned to, and we do a footstep on the left and right foot hitting the ground. And it actually changes depending on which surface you're on. So there's a base sort of sound of Lem's boot, and then if you're on the dirt, it has this kind of scrunchy dirt sand sound, and if you go on the fungus, it makes like a sloppy sound. I was thinking about what the fungus in Caelid in Elden Ring has. You know, fungus shouldn't really be wet, but I think given that you're trying to gross people out with this kind of fungal apocalypse, scavenger's rain type stuff here, then having a sloppy kind of sound to it is cool. But yeah, that's the kind of superfluous stuff I do when I'm like, I want to spend some time making my game better. I don't have the bandwidth or the time to do any deep thinking. I've got like 45 minutes. What can I do? Oh, something cool with game feel or sound effects. I think that's a good way to approach game dev if you want to do that, like kind of no 0 days type thing of like always working a little bit on it. It's like some days you just do some superfluous stuff that you know is going to make stuff better. Like there are a bunch of sprites in the sprite set that are still not cool, and I'm going to come back and do stuff too soon. You know, the climbing one is not great, for example. I want to make sure we've got some proper attack animations. Aiden said, thoughts on settings menu having separate tabs versus a longer scroll page. I don't know, it feels fine to me. I wouldn't want to scroll down to do the controls, like, especially given that something like controls, for example, is something you're going to change, play, maybe come back and change again, play. I wouldn't want to have to like go around too much for that. So this whole menu will get restyled to fit with the new game theme a little bit more, but I'm kind of happy with it from a functionality and layout point of view. The only thing I'm not happy with at the moment is I think the relic and the recipe button should be flipped the other way around because of some stuff to do with controller mapping. Oh no, the red rooms were always fungus, but they were supposed to sort of suggest this has always been fungus. That's like one of the oldest things in the game. Like since I started this last summer, was the idea that the scary red rooms would be like this kind of weird biological Junji Ito kind of themed room. That's why they've got these little stinky wiggly things that pop out that do like poison sprays. I think those might need. They're not really mobs, but maybe they need to use the mob system as well. So some of the stuff that they're coming out of a hole that I can't see. I need to fix that. Some of the stuff that Gleb's been building will tie in here. So normally when you start a run, you'll just have like a deck of 12 grey rooms that are the basic rooms, and then when you find these bookshelves, you can whack them. You get a card. That lets you draft a room, but at the moment it just gives you a random thing. All right, so the menu you saw a moment ago in the video will be part of that, and then that allows you to draft these kind of fancier, different color rooms. But the starting deck will always all be grey. So in some ways it will feel a lot more like a conventional deck builder, where you just start with this very basic deck every single run, and then build it out depending on what you're trying to get. The rats are new as well. They come out of holes, but it looks like the hole has got a layering issue where you can't see it. Yeah, and also I've put a debug in where if I press R, I can just give myself all of the relics. So now we have like the Kirby flap power. There's also a relic that gives me rewards when I zap these guys. So, you know, they'll drop a coin now. The coins flying to me is the what's it called? The kind of coin magnet relic. I'm trying to think of what's new that people might not have seen. Those blue puffs going around are like those are meant to be like a generic effect I use for when a relic is doing its magic thing, so that you're kind of aware that it's happening. But I might make them more subtle eventually, because they're a bit they seem quite over the top when you've got all of the relics, but I also appreciate that's not going to happen very often. Yeah, the rats are fun. They kind of feel mischievous. I don't feel too bad about killing them, which is something that I think I need to be kind of careful of in a game like this, is because people are going to kind of come to it because it's cute. If the rats are too cute, then you're going to feel bad squishing them. Yeah, so the garbage room... There's a... I made this as... This is kind of like the ultimate random crap at the start of the game room, and eventually there might be some upgrade that lets you swap these out for other things, but I kind of drew these using various parts from other parts of the game, these blocks, and then I had to take them out to GIMP and sort of shade them to be purple and green so they felt a little bit more coherent. Another thing I've done is certain blocks, if they don't have anything under them, they become fragile. So if I drop from like a bigger height onto that block, I can squish it. And that happens with dirt, trash, and fungus. If there's like a solo block with nothing underneath it supporting it. We've also got this kind of like stomp drop thing. You can do it on crates and stuff as well. So I don't have full damage at the moment, but I might make it so that eventually, you know, if you're falling a long way and you land on a crate like that, it kind of cushions your fall and you break open the crate. I quite like that. I was going to have it so eventually you could upgrade your spoon, the Doom Ladle, so that you could just hit open chests, but I thought that would be a bit too easy, so I might make it so that, you know, if you get the right upgrade, you can just drop onto chests from a height to smash them open, but you still need to like find the right thing to jump off of to do that, you know. So this guy, if I let him in the treasure room, this guy is basically like a Diablo treasure goblin, but he doesn't really do anything unless he has stuff to pick up. So while he's down there, he's like picking up gold. Although it's coming to me at the moment because I've got the... He'll pick that up, and then if I whack him, it'll come back out again. But he's using the new mob system, so he's got a bunch of generic behaviors that any mob can use. That bat's a bit useless at the moment. It can't even hurt you. I don't think any of them have any attacks yet, which is, you know, surprisingly low priority for this game because I'm trying to focus on a lot of the mobs being more annoying than dangerous. The fireball is pretty great. That's one of the relics. I don't like what happens with the glitchy red background when you build a red room at the moment. I need to kind of calm that down a bit. It's too much. Kind of goes into a big square when it should be clouds. We do have like a posterize effect over the whole game right now, which looks cool, but it does take some control away. Hello, Mama Kraken. Ah, she's looking. She's got fungus with that hole perfectly matched over her eye. She's got a Borg monocle on. That's great. John, I don't know. You're like asking proper computer science questions, and I am not an engineer in the slightest. You know, I know how to use Game Maker. I've learned other systems in the past. I mean, it's OOP because that's what Game Maker is, you know. And Game Maker only got structs and constructors in like the last couple of years, so if you kind of want to use the built-in kind of normal functions and everything, it's still very much just kind of forced OOP. But I'll show you how the system is working. But it's really just so we have the parent mob that does a bunch of stuff. We have that is actually a child of object item parent, which is basically any item in the game that isn't a solid block, right? So these don't really have physics collisions with each other. They only have physics collisions with the solid blocks that make up the walls and stuff. Cool, Matt Bart, that's good to hear. Good luck. I'm glad to hear you're still working on it. Yeah, so we have blocks and we have items. Blocks are the main thing things collide with. Items have their own physics and gravity and everything, and they generally only like check other items to see if they need to damage them or whatever, or they don't really stop each other's movement very much. And then we've got a set of macros and functions for mobs. And some of these will happen in all mobs, and some of them are very specific. So, for example, this is one that I started building, and it doesn't work yet, which is why the bats don't do anything interesting. Mob flyer, seek, dive, target. This is something I need to rewrite. Mob climbing jump basically allows mobs to see if there's like a platform they might be able to get to and try and jump up to it. It's not very clever, but it doesn't really need to be for this kind of cartoonish Spelunky type game. The main thing we're looking for really is if I've got something like a troll that is supposed to be like an intelligent character, and then I have something like a beetle or a bug. I want enough variety between the kind of behaviors that there's a like noticeable difference between like the animals that aren't supposed to be intelligent or perhaps don't have any self-preservation instinct and will just run off a ledge versus the things that will turn around when they're on a ledge. That's kind of like the level of detail in these kind of functions that I want, you know. So for example, in mob wander and turn, that has an avoid falling argument. So a character that's doing wander and turn will walk back and forth like a Koopa Trooper, but if avoid falling is off, they will walk off the edge of the ledge. And that's how I can make like a character seem dumber than another character. And that's really all you need in this sort of game. We don't want actual intelligence. We just want the mobs to feel slightly different from each other in the way that we'd expect. Yeah, so what I need to do really is go through our existing... I need to go and take all of the characters that we already have that were... These guys need to come out of here. And they need to go somewhere else. Because I've basically got a bunch of old characters like the Slug and stuff like that. And I think what I should do, if I just rename them to have mob, and then when I search for mob, they'll all come up. So I'll just start by doing that. And garlic we need to make again, because he's the only way of getting garlic. I mean, you can get garlic randomly in crates, but we want a good mix of like random ways of getting things and predictable ways of getting things, you know? Everything can't just be a thing you randomly find in a treasure chest. I'm just taking everything that should be a mob, making sure it has underscore mob in its names. I'm probably gonna just get rid of the original objects and remake them from scratch, so that I'm not getting in the way of the new mob system too much. Sender unknown, do you think it's better to be a self-taught game dev than school-based ones like education courses? Well, here's the thing. You shouldn't be paying anyone for a course in some sort of creative thing that you've never done. Whether it's someone online or a university or whatever, those courses are... very rarely are they designed for someone who's never done the thing at all before. And if they are, then they're not teaching anything you couldn't just learn yourself by reading the manual. So, I don't know. I'm always a little bit wary of, you know, courses that will kind of take anyone on regardless of experience. I think you should be self-taught at something for a little bit, regardless of whether you want to do a formal course or not. I know that doesn't directly answer your question, but I think that the answer is you're going to have to be self-taught regardless. And like if you went to university to do a creative thing like music or making games or film, the expectation would be that you're practicing in your spare time and you already know how to practice in your spare time and stuff like that. You're not just showing up and going, tell me what to do, and then only doing exactly what you're told. That's not how you get sufficiently good at anything in order to be able to do it for a living, you know? So... was it called the Hornet? The green... Yeah, okay. There's this guy. I really like that how that sprite came out. I'm going to work on them first, I think, because that's quite a simple character. They just buzz around. They occasionally drop some acid. Okay. So I'm going to get rid of the original Hornet object. Sorry, buddy. And get rid of the goat. We're just going to do it. I'm going to... Oh, the Udderling, that should be labeled as a mob as well. And I'm going to get rid of that one as well. I'm just getting rid of all of the original characters because we're going to rebuild them now. Oh, Cinder recently graduated from a game dev and programming course, but I don't know if I want to pursue an advanced diploma on the same course. Yeah, the diploma won't be... The diploma won't be that valuable in itself. Like, it wouldn't make the difference between whether you get a job or not, for example. Okay, we've got some... I can't think of any other creatures that I put in. I'm going to just go in and dig around manually. I will move some of this stuff around in a minute. Right. Get rid of that one as well. Making sure everything that is now a mob is going in the right stuff. This might look really long-winded, but ultimately I think it's better to make one-off little prototypes for things until you know what the game is and then worry about the systems and stuff later on. So although I now have to go through this process of like tidying everything up, this is a weird game and it's taken me a long time to know like how many creatures do we need, like what sort of behaviors do they need to have. And because I'm not making the kind of game where the enemies are just there for you to fight and they're just like you bounce into them and they just immediately like hurt you when you touch them. It's not that sort of game. The characters are more supposed to be like Minecraft mobs that all have their own little thing that they do and their own like place in the economy as a kind of ecosystem, you know. It's real kind of trad roguelike stuff. So it's really important to get a sense of what you need the content in the system to do before you systematize it too much. I think that's kind of where I'm coming from with this. Okay, all of these guys. Okay, so maybe we do move the sprites into there. Yeah, okay, sprites go in there. We've got a characters folder with the sprites folder in it. And then the mobs have their own objects in the mob folder. I think that makes sense. Lots of stuff in here that just doesn't exist in the game anymore. Matt Bart said, do you have an end in sight vision of Golem Gourmet? Yeah, I mean, we're going to try and release it in the first quarter of next year. I've got a reasonably good idea of what the whole game is. The thing I struggle with is the end of the game, and that's because I realized that I never finish games, so I never really have a good sense of what the end state of a equivalent game would be like, you know. I've played games like Spelunky and Hades for so many runs, but the amount of times I actually finish them is usually 0. So I need to work out what a satisfying end for all of this is, because we've got the individual runs you can do in the game, which will gradually get longer and more complex and risky and stuff like that. And then we've also got the meta game of upgrading stuff using coins, which is a little bit like the Rogue Legacy meta game, where you're just like gradually upgrading, you know, how much money certain things give you, or how many objects are dropped by a particular thing, all of that kind of stuff. And all of that, totally fine. But turning it into a satisfying, like, you finished now, the game is over. Like, I don't, the problem for me with that is that I don't care about that in games, and I know other people do, you know? So it's hard for me to design that thing because it's not something I personally care about. I play games for the journey, not the destination. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of any of these that we're not currently using. We're going to get rid of the gnome, the snail, the gnome, and the meat golem are old things that we're getting rid of now. Whereas the Makin has been refactored into actually being a proper mob. And then I'm going to try and do the snail first. That will be what we do. And I'll just call it snail. Try and give them the simplest name rather than some thematic name that might change later on. And the way the snail works is if you want to cook, there's dishes you need to cook with the snail. You can only cook them when they're in their shell. And if you hit them, their shell smashes and they become like a slug instead. So, oh, hang on, I just messed that up. Changed the wrong one. This is my biggest UX problem ongoing with game makers. Like the amount of times I click into something and I think I'm editing the right thing and then I'm editing the last thing I had selected instead. And it happens often enough that I'm almost certain it's not just a me problem. Right. There we go. Snail. And it's got a spawner pin tag, which means our debug bug spawner puts it to the top, which is quite helpful. Okay, so these, let's just see what needs to be different about a snail from the generic mob. Right, it doesn't need to have 3 life, it needs to have 2, because it has 2 states, where one is with the shell on, you hit it once, the shell goes off, you hit it again, it goes entirely. Do we want it to have flammability? Don't know. Can't remember how the flammability works. I'll put it at 0.2. It's definitely not going to have evasion. It's not going to throw any items. I don't know why that's set that way. Holdable true. So that's a this is why it's important for mobs to be a child of item parent, because that allows the player to like pick them up and treat them like any other object in the game. And this for me is like when people are like, oh, platformers, no one likes platformers. That for me is the like killer feature. That's what made Spelunky so special, and it's not an unusual thing. It's a Mario thing to be able to pick up an item and carry it over your head and walk around and throw it and use it for stuff. But for me, that is the distinction that can make a platformer into like much richer kind of adventure game where you're able to have all of these item interactions. You know, I keep it simple. I don't have an inventory. It's like you pick up relics and then you've got them for the rest of the run. You pick up objects and you throw them. And then there's things like gold that, you know, you just pick up automatically and it increments a number. But by having lots of items you can pick up and throw, you can do lots and lots of stuff with what you're throwing it at and all of that kind of stuff. So we want to go, there's some speed stuff on here as well, I think. Walk speed 1, run speed 2. I'll make walk speed even slower. So yeah, the child gets, the way that it works is, so in the create event, you see where it says event inherited here. That will be, where it says event inherited, it will run the create event for item parent. And actually, this shouldn't be a child of item parent. This should be a child of mob parent. There we go. Just check I haven't got that in. So it will, the event inherited will make it run its parent's create event first, and then afterwards it will do all of this stuff. So any of these variables that were already set by the parent's create event will be overwritten by the new ones. So yeah, I'm just gonna, when we destroy it, we've got a generic piece of code to say if this was being carried by the player, then deal with that. We also want to create a blob of acid when this is destroyed. So we're just going to do that in a single. Actually, let me see what the rats do here, because I think they've got like a little... Yeah, they've got a particle burst there. I'm going to copy that across. Some of this stuff I might want to genericize later on, but I'm just going to do it through copy paste, and then I will come back and make it into its own thing later on. They don't need to make a rat noise, but they should have a little cartoon whack sound. And then we're going to create a blob of acid at their spot where they can, what's it called? Melt into the ground if you smash them. Should be object acid blob, I think. Yeah, acid blob. And we'll make that at the top of the bounding box. And var blob. And then we'll give it a little bit of a nudge. So it sort of like plops up in the air a little bit. Maybe we do like a shatter sound as well. Was like if I do a oh no, that should be when you break their shell, shouldn't it? Okay, so do that somewhere else. So when they're hit by a hurter, this is like a generic hurt box. Okay, cool. I think I know what to do here, right? So they don't have any evasion. We don't care about that. Is it called life? I can never remember if I've called it life or health. So if they're at 2, and I will use max life as the reference here. So when something hits them, if their life is at their max life, then we need to change them to the unshelled version. Where's the other sprite? What's it called? I'm going to change these to just be snail rather than acid snail because it's not helpful. And then slug. And maybe the slugs can spawn as slugs. I didn't think about that. I don't know. Maybe we can give them like a random chance to just start spawn with 1 health and be a slug. And then that could be a thing that you upgrade. So if they've got 2 health and you hit them, they turn into the slug thing, and then holdable becomes false. So you can only pick them up when they've got a shell. That's kind of like the rule that we're working with here. Otherwise, they're an acid slug. You can't pick them up anymore. Guys in the chat, thanks for helping each other out. I'm sorry I haven't been reading. I have to like think out loud a lot as I'm working through this stuff because I'm not an expert in any of this. You know, some of you will be looking at it and thinking I'm really messy. Others will be like, I don't know how anyone does any of this. It's very rare to find someone that's exactly in the middle. One of the reasons why I find streaming helpful is you're just kind of cardboard coding the entire time. You know, you're thinking out loud. So, okay. If this gets hit by a hurt box, we check to see if it's got any evasion. I'll leave that in place just in case we want to make that evasion variable work for all of the creatures at some point. We play a normal whack sound. We play a ceramic smashing sound, which is the sound of the jars normally, but I think it will work here as well. We turn it into a slug. We make it no longer holdable. Okay. Now, if And then we do mob damage 1. And then we don't do any of this other stuff. So mob damage 1 is going to do 1 damage to the mob, and at that point it will either have turned it into a slug, or if it already was, if it brings it to 0 health, then it will, at that point it will already be a slug, and it will turn into a blob of acid. And this game doesn't have like, this is like supposed to be cartoon platformer land, so we basically, there are very few instances where something does more than 1 damage. With like a point of damage in this is a big deal. Most creatures, you just whack them, they're gone. If a creature has more than 1 health, then it's like a multiple stage enemy that has a shell or armor that you crack off with 1 attack or whatever. But most of the time, like 1 damage is a big deal, because we're kind of in Mario land here. We're not in, you know, stats-driven RPGs where things have very granular amounts of damage. It's just not the sort of game it is. Okay, so and I think I should, because this is a holdable object and we want to use the snail as an ingredient, I probably want to do a check to make sure that basically it can't be damaged when you're carrying it around. So if the player is carrying the snail around because they want to stick it in a pot and make some escargot, then none of this can happen, kind of thing. Just checking this collision with the item parent as well. Yeah, that's too... Oh, okay. What I'm going to do is turn... Yeah, I mean, the simple approach to damage is really just about making sure the thing is legible to the player, right? There's a reason why games that have very stats-driven stuff need to have things like damage numbers flying around and everything. And whereas this is more like an interactive cartoon, so it's just a different damage model generally. Okay, so function change. This is going to have its own function called change or lose shell break. Okay, shell break. And we'll say what we're going to do is take some of this and say, okay, if life, so we're going to put this in instead. If life is 1, then do this stuff. Just doing this so that I can put it in the different places where it needs to be and not have to repeat myself. Okay, so we're going to have a thing called shell break that happens after mob damage. And we basically check. The reason I'm doing this now is that because I also have events that are like when you throw stuff at characters, and that needs to do some slightly different checks. So other, just making a user event to save these functions in so that they've got their own space. So shell break just checks if their life is at 1 after being damaged, and then if it is, it plays the shatter sound, changes them to a slug mob, makes them holdable. And we'll do that here as well. There's a lot of stuff here that I should be making generic, but all I'm trying to do at this stage is take the creatures I prototyped previously, put them into the new system, and that will help me see which parts of the new system I need to go through and make more generic later on. But this is also not going to be a game that has like 50 things in it, you know, so as long as I can get them working somewhat reliably. Okay, so we've got the stuff in, so far we've got the stuff in that makes the snail unique. So the stuff that is very specific to the snail, which is the fact that it's kind of has 2 points of life and it can be smashed open, and then when it's destroyed it creates acid. That's the stuff that's unique. Now I just need to go into the step event and do the stuff that is the generic stuff that we've already got on other characters. So the turning, like moving and turning thing, I think is going to happen here somewhere. So yeah, we would go, what's the name of the function? It's called mob. Maybe I needed to name these differently so that I could find them easy. Mob wander and turn, that's what it's called. So it's going to do wander and turn. This is every seconds it has a something % chance to turn. Does it avoid falling and will it dive off of ledges? And the difference between avoid falling and ledge dive is that avoid falling is just will it walk off ledges, and ledge dive is like it will leap when it reaches the edge of a ledge. So yeah, hang on, I can turn the mic up, but the last time I did it I had to do it with nasty compressors and it got really kind of boxy. There we go, let's try that. Okay, mob wander and turn. Okay, let's do every 1 second have a 5% chance to turn. Avoid falling, yes. Ledge dive, false. So this will basically early out. This is doing a modulo time slice thing. So when it tries to run this function, if it's not on the second, you know, this is running every second. So if it's not, then everything else would be ignored. And if it's exactly on a second, then it will do stuff. I'm going to put some more stuff in there eventually so that we have some checks to see if stuff is on screen, and some of these things basically don't run if we can't see the creature. Yeah, I like Krangbin as well. The band I've been sort of working on over the last year is very much that kind of like soft psychedelia stuff. It's been very hard to find people that want to play that kind of stuff. Like, people like the idea of it, and then you get them in a room and they want to play much heavier rock music, and it's like, no, I just chill out. It's very hard to find like drummers and guitarists. They like the idea of it, and then once you get them in a room, they're like, want to play heavier stuff. Okay. Something cooking data. Ah, yeah. Okay, that's easy to fix. Cooking data. Where are you, cooking data? So this is where we use the snail as an ingredient. Where has he gone? Going to be disappearing off here. So escargot has a garlic and a snail in it. That's what we need to make an escargot in this game. Now, that's what the escargot object looks like. It's like a little bowl with a nice little... But as an ingredient, we need snail, which is actually object snail now, not acid snail. Object mob _ snail. But it only works, or it should only work, and this is what we can test in a minute. It should only work if it's still got its shell on. I don't want to have to make too much of like a exception for how the Cauldron handles this, but... Hey, that's what their error messages are for. Yeah, every time you see a neatly laid out data table in this game project, that's Gleb. That's definitely not me. I'm getting better, but it's, you know, I don't have years of that. I really like the footsteps. I know lots of platformers don't have them, but because we're doing this kind of like muscular himbo character, it feels very good. Especially like going run, 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 launch. Just works really well. Okay, so I don't have any... We've got a reference to goat trying to be spawned there. That can't happen, so let me just find where that is. That's in the soil object. What's going on there? Ah, okay. This is my very janky way of like trying to determine... Oh no, hang on. Object underscore mob underscore goat doesn't exist yet. Okay, so I'll go and make that exist. Yeah, I think a lot of the time footsteps are a little bit too repetitive. You know, I think there's valid reasons for doing it, but in this case I do think it makes the character feel heavier. Yeah, I put those in this week and they do work, and it also makes the fungal world feel a lot more gross, which is good. Because part of what's good about making a food-related game is you can really play around with gross-out stuff. It allows you to do things that are horrible without it being horror, you know? Okay, so object goat, where are you here? Right, you guys don't need to... This is our list of things that show up on the map. Let's get rid of those for a minute. Oh, this is the list of acceptable items from the meat grinder that you haven't seen yet. I need to rebuild that at some point. I'm just going to give mobs like a flag to say, hey, am I made of meat? Thanks to everyone in the chat for helping out Sender on Loan. Yeah, I generally would try and separate game dev from your need to work for money. Like, obviously apply for game dev jobs. You should be able to apply for game dev jobs now you've done your course and you know how to do stuff. But ultimately, whether you get those will be based on what's in your portfolio. And it doesn't really matter whether you got that from being on a course or as a hobbyist. And depending who you get as a hiring manager, they might prefer different things anyway. Okay, let's see if that runs now. But, you know, jobs are jobs. You have to do something for money. And doing something incredibly competitive for money is only viable if you sort of know what standard you're working at and how you compete with the other people who are out there, you know? Robin said, have you ever told the story about how you transitioned from your day job to this? I feel like I spend 90% of my time doing my job daydreaming about my solo ventures nowadays. Yeah. I'll talk about it in a minute. Remind me in a minute. I don't think anything that I've done is like super repeatable, and I definitely haven't done the fiscally responsible thing that a lot of... I think a lot of the time when you get people that have left like software development to go indie making games, they have a runway of like, hey, I've saved up a year's worth and I can just do what I want for a year. I didn't do that. I wasn't earning enough to do that. Okay, dairy farm, see if that crashes. Okay, cool. We've eliminated the crashes. Let's make a snail. Hello, snail. You look like a snail I've seen before. Okay, so the snail is pick-upable. It is doing some strange thing where it draws weirdly, which I've noticed with other mobs, and I think that's because when the player holds things, it takes over their draw event. So one thing I need to do there is go into the parent object and... I mean, that should be doing it there. If held true, set image alpha to 0. Let me just see if that's being inherited properly. No, it's not, because I copied... I copied the parent object, and... so there's a bunch of inheritance stuff here. Okay, so what we should have instead is... something like that. So, although I understand how inheritance works at a abstract level, I haven't built things like this very often, so I always forget how to do things on a very basic, like how does the game engine work thing. So I'll do things like copy the parent and then forget that it's inheriting from something else. Okay. So that should be... Picking mobs up generally has a display bug, which isn't unique to the snail. Whacking the snail. And then the shell break function that I put in here needs to go in the create event, maybe? Do you have anything you can flip the sprite while it's... So it goes inside its shell, but I could also turn that upside down. That would be fun. Sender, about applying for jobs, I think the trick is to stop seeing them as glamorous and just see them as work. And I know, like, the games industry has always been hard to get into... And obviously, I commiserate with anyone that's lost a job in it recently and so on. But I think a lot of the stories you hear coming from those sorts of people are people that wouldn't work outside of like a cool AAA game that they really care about. And there's folks at the bottom end of the games industry who are just like happy to work on naff games they don't like very much. In order to have a job, and I was always one of them, and that was partly because I had kids quite young and I couldn't move out of my area, so I just had to take whatever was available. And then even later, when lots of places went remote, it was still a case of like, well, what's the easier job to get? And like, getting a job on Baldur's Gate 3 is a lot more competitive than getting a job working on some like casual mobile game that isn't very cool and doesn't have like fans clamoring to work on it. So there's like lots and lots of tiers, and the entry level, making games which are adverts for other people, working on gambling games and stuff like that. There is a tier of stuff there that people just act like doesn't exist if their sole goal is to work on AAA games that they like. You don't need to be working on a game that you like to get helpful work experience, and often you'll find the jobs pay better. Oh, there's something strange going on there. Got like a double stacking of room elements. You don't have to be working on games that you like to be doing something productive that you learn from. And also tends to be the cool places that have the worst, you know, work-life balance and stuff. Okay, they didn't change to being see-through. They have changed from being holdable, so that's interesting. Okay, so the shell break thing doesn't properly change the frame, the art. So let's see what's going on there. See if that is actually what it should look like. Yep, okay. I think I probably just need to give it its own little animation manager over here and say, hey, if held equals true, then do this. Else, if life equals 1, do this. So sprite index equals sprite mob snail carry. And then it's the slug. That's because I've written sprite, idiot. And then under any other condition, we go back to snail. And we probably want to do a little bit of a particle thing when we shatter its shell as well, but we'll come to that in a minute. So Robin, when I started the channel, I was still at King. I was on like I did a year at King working on one of their match 3 games. And it was a job I got headhunted into, and then I was, you know, I was so bored and I had so little to do at that job that I set the YouTube channel up halfway through the year just to kind of be like, okay, if I did a YouTube channel, what would it be like? And that let me kind of just mess around with it a little bit and work out what the format was. So it's very much like a don't give up your day job type thing, you know? So I was running the YouTube channel for about 8 months before I stopped doing that job. And then when I came to the end of that contract, I mean, there were opportunities to like apply for that job full time and stuff. But by that point, it seemed like it was a viable thing to do full time because the Patreon was picking up. And I was still doing some freelance work where I was like working on an edgy game for someone as well. So it was very much a gradual transition. But after I left that contract, I was like, okay, I'm going to do the YouTube and I'm going to do all of the stuff we do in our Discord and everything and try and get that up and running. But also, I will take freelance work, but I won't do like full-time contracts for people, you know. I'll only do things that are paid by the project or paid by the hour or the day or whatever. So it's been a kind of gradual transition. Okay. When I pick him up, he's still doing that double display thing, which again, I think is a generic problem. So that's the snail has gone into its shell, put it back down again, comes out of its shell, pick it back up, smash it. Now it's a slug. Now I can't pick it up. And now if I smash it again, it turns into acid and it starts breaking the level up. Cool. Okay. That's good. Can I throw them? Yes. Can I cook them? That's what we want to know about. Yeah. So if I spawn a garlic, which we don't have a reliable way of getting in the game yet, but we'll work on that in a minute. I think the job I learned the most from was the first game dev job I had, which I got when I was 28, which was mostly working on Amateur Surgeon, but writing a bunch of pitches and stuff. I learned the most stuff there. Oh, that's a renamed asset that I didn't fix. And that was because I did so much different stuff. You know, I was doing level design. I was doing a I was doing menu design, I was doing economic balancing, I was doing kind of back-end tracking of game data and stuff like that. And I was basically responsible. I was hired as an assistant producer, which, you know, kind of is a project manager, but in a small studio, it ends up basically being a kind of dog's body that fills in every gap. I learned so much in that role because pretty much every time there was something that needed doing that wasn't code or art, I did it, whether it was like level design or finding sound effects or bits of writing, you know, managing the localization team, or like managing QA with the publisher. I did all of those things. So that, and that was quite an established studio. So they all knew what they were doing, right? It wasn't like I had to go in and build the studio. So I learned a lot in that case. And then, like, without dragging specific companies, I think after the first studio, I went and taught for like 4 or 5 years. And then after that, I went and worked at 2 different companies. I mean, you can kind of work out who's who anyway. But they were kind of 2 different extremes of things I didn't like. And the larger, more established company was like really boring to work at because no one had any creative control of anything. Everything was sort of designed by committee. You couldn't really do anything on gut feel. You had to do everything through like data, and it kind of meant every decision that was made was based on copying something that already existed. And there was never any sense of like, hey, you know, 3 of us on the team think this would be a good idea, so let's just spend some time trying it out. And I kind of understand where that risk aversion comes from, but at the same time, you just spend so much time doing nothing in your job because no one really wants anyone to do anything, because the processes are so rigid and slow. And then the other place I worked around about that time was a startup where I got to do loads of cool stuff. And, you know, we were working in Roblox and Fortnite and making stuff for people in those. So I got to do like a bunch of 3D level design and stuff that I don't really do on my own games because I don't make 3D games. Lots of interesting stuff there, but that was a startup that was kind of like run by people that didn't really work in games before. So I went in, and a role where I was supposed to be a senior designer ended up kind of also being a producer role because they hadn't hired a producer and they didn't really understand what one was or why they needed one. And I think their idea was that a game designer was basically a project manager and should do all of that stuff. So I ended up in this position where it was like, hey, I like kind of half of the work I'm doing here, but I've basically been hired to do 2 or 3 people's jobs. And I didn't really know until I got there because, you know, the people writing the job description weren't necessarily aware of what roles usually exist on a games team and what a designer is and isn't. So those 2 jobs for me, they taught me a lot about what I did and didn't want to do. And I didn't want to work somewhere that was like completely chaotic where I would be responsible for actually building the game studio, you know, and deciding how it works. I also didn't want to work somewhere where everything was so rigid and calcified and set in stone that it just took forever to do anything, you know. So the last couple of jobs really just taught me about what I'm willing to do and not willing to do. The first job I had taught me the most kind of practical stuff, and I think later on I just got frustrated because, I mean, it's like any kind of, it's like anything where you sort of get Peter principle. So the Peter principle is the idea that anyone will eventually get anyone will eventually get what's it called, promoted to the point of incompetence, right? You hear people in, this happens to people in academia, like people that run departments in universities. They're not managers, they're just academics. They're just like random people with a PhD in music or music or whatever, and they kind of get promoted to the point where they're now in a role that they can't really do and haven't had any training for. And it happens with tech, it happens with design. It's like you want the bigger job with the more money and the more responsibility, but then it ends up just you doing more management and doing less of what you like. The thing that always attracted me to games was being able to bounce around between all these sub-disciplines, like getting your hands dirty doing different things. And so yeah, I can't really imagine anywhere that I would really want to take a job working for someone else anymore, unless it's like you know, basically a company that I really, really respect, and I know what they work on, and I know how they work already. But I think I've been stung too many times now. If I were to quit doing this now and go and do something else, it wouldn't be making media. It would be like some sort of locally based council job or something. You know, I don't want to work in the education system anymore. I only really want to work on games if I can see my own fingerprints in them and actually have some kind of creative say in what they are. And that kind of narrows it down quite a bit. Okay, so Snail works. Snail does all the things that we want it to do for now. I'm going to have another little look at what's going on with the display bug. So the draw event is just doing what the parent does. So let's get rid of that for a moment. And we'll go and have a look at the parent mob. And let's see what item parent does in the draw event, because item parent shouldn't really be causing that problem because other objects don't have that problem. Okay, that's what normal objects do. Maybe it's because mobs can move around a bit. So they can kind of like flip which way they're facing and stuff. So let's do if not held, draw self. So just dipping into the chat, so I'm not catching everything in the chat. Yeah, Robin, same vibe. Do different stuff as much as possible, absolutely. John said, do you think that having that difficult job with too many responsibilities actually helped introduce you to the many intricacies of game dev? I don't know. I think that job was different because it was like, at that point, I already knew, you know, I'd already worked in a studio for a couple of years, and then I've been teaching it for a couple of years, and I've always been the sort of person where if I want to understand how an industry works, I will just spend, like, if I have to drive somewhere, I will put on a podcast where it's people talking at quite a high level about the music industry or the games industry or something I find interesting. And that's why when it comes to certain game dev podcasts on YouTube and stuff like that, I don't like them because they ask the same questions every time. They always try and frame things as like, how can you turn this into an insight for a beginner and stuff like that? I'm not interested in that. So I don't know. I feel like I've always just had a reasonably realistic idea about how things work, because my way of professionalizing myself has always been to just get a little bit out of my own depth and like listen to people talk about their jobs who are maybe saying stuff where I don't understand like 70% of it. And okay, so when this is facing the right way, it's visible, and then when it's going the other way, it's invisible, and that's only when it's held. Okay, so does that happen with this as well? Oh, I jumped on the box. I mean, the problem with the studio I described was like most of the people there hadn't been hired from working in game studios. Okay, so that's a generic object problem, that if the item is the wrong way, it doesn't draw when it's being carried, which is something that is handled by the player, because basically when an item is being carried, it shouldn't draw itself. The player should draw it. And the reason for that is because we're doing some stuff to like make sure that the character's arm goes in the right place. And also, you'll notice when Lem walks under like low doorways, it kind of lowers objects so that they don't smash into the ceiling. So that's what's going on there. Okay, so this makes item carrying look better when idle. Yeah. I wish I was the sort of person that could be comfortable putting a couple of years into a job I hate and just saving up the money, but I'm the sort of person where that will give me a nervous breakdown. And I've had that from stress, and I've had something near to it from just being like bored and feeling like the work I was doing was completely unrewarding. A lot of people with kind of creative backgrounds are, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is not in the same order as everyone else. Like, our need to do something that feels meaningful and interesting to us is in the wrong place in our priorities, and you can't really do anything about that. Okay. If we've got a carry item and the character is carrying it and the carry item exists, okay. So this is the bit that I need to rewrite. Let's see what that does. This is code I haven't touched in months. I think most, to answer your question about music, I think most creative things inform each other in some way. I wouldn't say the music thing directly gives me a sense of rhythm in games, but I think, like if you learn a thing that's to do with understanding and making images, like photography or film, there's going to be visual stuff in a game that helps you with. Like, music and dance and sport are about like humans performing over an amount of time, you know, so they're gonna have stuff that makes sense in games as well, or like parallels you can draw. Carry sprite. Okay, what's going on there then? Oh. This is an annoying little bug, but it's one that I've needed to fix for a while. I mean, I think a lot of the reason why there's a lot of sour grapes in the kind of online indie dev hobbyist community is that people, you know, the big barrier people need to get over to be able to make games is the coding, and then they find out that how games look and feel does actually matter later on, or some of the people were just in denial about it forever, and then it's like, oh, it's unfair that these other people that aren't as good at coding as me seem to do better, because lo and behold, people care how things look. So I wouldn't say people should necessarily learn music or filmmaking or whatever to be a better game developer, but I think people that end up being good game developers just are naturally inquisitive about the things that they're passionate about and tend to like just have a go at them. For me, making stuff has always just been an extension of appreciating stuff. You know, like I see some animation thing and I'm like, how does that work? And then my interest in the thing as like a fan of it makes me eventually want to want to do it myself. Okay, so our wander and turn code isn't working because they're kind of going off ledges. I need to fix that. It's because it's not checking it often enough, and what should be happening is we're running that more than once a second. We're running it like 3 times a second, and then most of the time it will check for an edge. But our carry sprite bug is fixed now. Oof. Need to like tighten up the hitboxes on stuff because I don't think that should have blown up that TNT box. The key dragons are one of my favorite mobs in this so far. I'm going to make them in different colors eventually. And then maybe like a special room full of eggs, like a big mummy key dragon or something. Go and fight the mummy key dragon and steal her babies so that you can use them to open other rooms. Might make the snail a little bit smaller. I don't know. Maybe the acid slug should just like occasionally spit out a bit of acid just to make it a little bit more chaotic. Right, let's make the wander and turn work a bit better. So that should be happening like 3 times. Let's see if that actually works. It might be one of those things where I wrote the function ages ago and didn't really check it thoroughly, so it's not really that transferable. Totally agree with you, Robin. You gotta have your own idea about what's good and what's not. And then there's a follow-on problem from that where people have an idea of what's good that is not aligned with what they're able to do, right? And if you have a reasonably broad taste, then at some point you're going to be able to like look at what you're able to do and what you want to do and find some middle ground. But if what you're able to do is MS Paint and what you want to do is make AAA games, then you're always going to struggle. For reasons that should be quite obvious, but aren't to a lot of people. That one's on fire now. They're both on fire now. Okay, let's go and check out the mob behaviors. We're going to tweak the burn. That's interesting. The fire positions when they're burning aren't very good. Okay, and then we'll go and look at wander and turn and see why that's not really working properly. So we check if we are on the ground or flying and we're not held. And then we can do our normal movement stuff. Oh, it's because I've turned it off. John said maybe agent experience is the only real way to develop a creative taste in the first place. Yeah. I think you also I mean, you have to know what you like and what you don't like and what you care about, and I think you develop those skills by talking to people and being sociable, which isn't the same as like making stuff. It's like an adjacent thing, but it's not the same. There we go. You turn properly now. There we go. Just like a proper video game character. Pop you in there. Delicious. I feel like we should make Garlock work next, because then we can have a proper meal made from mobs. I am a meal that's made of mobs. You're on the internet looking at corn cobs. I think, did one of these guys just eat my meal as I was carrying it? You shouldn't be able to do that, buddy. Rat. Okay. Don't eat my food when I'm carrying it. That's not right. Okay, I'm gonna do a git push now. Mobs update. Rats can't eat food you're holding. Wander ledge detection back on. Snails work. And then while we're still on snails, we're gonna give them a chance to turn into a slug when they're spawned. If I random, let's make it a 1 in 3. And then before I move on to another mob, let's actually put them in some levels as well. So I'll make it so that every green room has a chance to have a snail in it. For now. This won't necessarily be the actual logic we use. Okay. The best way to do this workflow-wise, close all of these windows. Open up all of the green rooms that are currently in the game. And then, okay, so we're going to say, it would be quite good if snails ate certain types of food as well, because that's what snails do, right, as a pest. Okay. So we'll go create a layer called spawn chance 10 snail. And then, can I copy the layer to different rooms? Is that a thing? Copy that? No, you can't. Okay, but I can make the name of it. Right, that's not used anymore. That's not used anymore. The mineshaft is. So instance layer called spawn chance 10 snail. And the mine is used, I think. The henge is used. And the dairy is used. And the mushroom cavern is used. Okay, so these snails will have a 10% chance to spawn. The carnival isn't used anymore either. Okay, so... And then, so if I put more on there, there's a chance we might spawn more than one. So I'm gonna... On the farm, that's a place where mobs should be, where snails should be a problem. So I'm gonna put 4 in on the farm. And then when I make them eat vegetables and stuff, they're gonna actually be something you need to deal with. Sapling and Veil, they're not things anymore. Mine shaft. Let's have 3 here. I feel like having them at the top is better encounter design, because if we smash them and they get acid everywhere, there's more for the acid to like hit on the way down. So I'm gonna keep them all near the top. And then in the mine, very, you know, small chance that there'll be 2 that show up at the top here. And the henge, we've got just a chance for there to be 1 there and 1 there. I will change how these work at some point, but what I'm trying to do is, before I move on to something else, make sure that these are naturally occurring in the game. And then as I'm playing the game and like testing other things, they will just sort of exist as part of the ecosystem of the game again. And that will make my life somewhat easier, because I will start to get a feel for like how these things are actually part of the game, rather than just when I'm laser focused on them because I'm working on that part of the game at that moment in time. Okay, so I think if I'm going to have them eat stuff that the player wants, then I should consider them as pests. So there's a relic in the game called the Pest Reward that gives you coins for getting rid of rats and bugs. And I just want to put that in place here. It's good popping back in the chat. See? Ducks eat snails. Excellent. That's fun. Still haven't played Mugenics. I'm tempted to make them a tiny bit smaller, but let's do functionality stuff first rather than how they look. Okay. See how eating stuff works. Copy that across. Make them eat the vegetables. Not everything has eating behaviors, because some characters exist to eat your food, and some of them exist to eat you. I'm trying to focus on the stuff that exists to eat your food first. So they are only going to have a limited amount of things that they're going to eat. I'm going to simplify this. So they're only going to eat certain things. I could probably do this by making a list and then checking if... Hang on, let me see how I would do that. If list contains... maybe you can do that in an array, but you can't do it in a list. Yeah, so we would have a if liked foods contains the food.object index, then we can eat it. So we would do that there, and then we would do liked foods as an array of object indexes of stuff that the snail will eat. Snail chat. This is snail day, everyone. Liked foods is object root, object spinach, object fruit, object garlic. This isn't the most future-proof way of doing this, but I'm spinaches, garlic, root. Yeah, that'll do for now. Not a very future-proof way of doing this. What I should really do is have tags to say, hey, this is this type of food, and anything that likes this type of food will eat this. But I'll come back to that later. Probably when I'm expanding how many food items there are. But I've been trying to work on the basis that we don't have loads and loads of variety in the raw ingredients, and it's more about interesting combinations of two things to get the different foods. One of the things I'm going to do in a couple of months is in November, I'm probably going to take a month off doing the Patreon Q&A, and during that month, folks who are in the blue and purple tier can like suggest a bunch of stuff, and I will try and fit it into the game. But I want to do that on the basis of like people suggesting their favorite underrepresented food or something, like if you've got favorite national dish or whatever. Okay, that should make them do a little nom nom. If we wanted to be really evil, we could make it so that the snails eating things generates acid and melts the floor, but yeah, it's 24 by 24, the grid. What have I done? I've broken something. Broken something here? I haven't changed anything here. Oh, hang on. Ah. Food.held equals false. That'll be better. And that'll be the same thing here. That was that. Unrelated to what we were just doing. Let's see if that's cleared everything up. Oh, we're not doing difficulty settings. No. This is a small scale indie roguelike which is designed around the idea that failure is there to be funny and fun. We'll have accessibility settings for things like screen shake and everything, but not difficulty settings in a game like this. The conversation about difficulty settings is very complex, but I think when you hear people say, oh, without difficulty settings, my disabled friend or family member wouldn't have been able to play this game. It's like, well, the desire to play the game is going to be different depending on what sort of game it is. And I think when you have action games that are also story games, there's like a much stronger reason to do that. Whereas if the whole appeal of playing a game is that it is a platformer, then you're going to need to be able to do things in real time, you know? I will never save my work, Connor. Okay, let's build some rooms and see if they just show up naturally. They've only got, each one's only got a 1 in 10 chance. We got both of them this time. Let's see if we can get them to eat. Fruit. Give me a fruit. Give me garlic. You gonna eat it? Are you gonna eat that garlic? You're not going to eat? Well. I need to do some better food getting squished. That sounds soon, I think. You like that? You want some garlic? You don't like garlic? Okay. You want some... I think Slug's broken. Don't think Slug knows how to eat. So, if you haven't fathomed how it works, the red rooms in this game don't start in your deck. They are spawned by feeding the red doors and using the red keys, which are like little dragons. There might be a way of getting them in your deck later on, but I'm trying to keep them as like these high-risk, high-reward things. Yeah, they do need a... what's the sound for food rejection? Or something. It should screw up its mouth as well, the door, when you do that. When there's something it doesn't want to eat. Absolutely not crazy for wanting to buy a field recorder. That's a cool thing to buy. I mean, you can get very cheap. Even recording sound with an iPhone, like, it's not bad. With like YouTube and video and stuff, people are more sensitive to the sound quality than the video quality. But if you're using some sort of recording device and you use it for everything, then it's just going to make it kind of coherent if it's the same device, you know? Robin said, how do the little patrons at the dinner tables work mechanically? So I will just do a quick run playing the game properly so you can see. So let me just restart. At the moment, I have the game set so it's going to randomize how deep you are into the game each time you play it. So this guy wants a trash bag because he's a rat. This guy wants some tempura, and the princess wants some lokum, which is like a Turkish delight. I love the way the speech bubble dissipates because of the posterize effect. I only just noticed that. Okay, so this guy, very easy to serve. He just wants a bag of trash, so we can just spawn the trash dump and we will almost certainly get something he wants. Although, I've just spawned a trash dump with no trash in it. That's not good. I'm going to restart until we get, like, a starting run. Okay, we're at 0 stars, so that's easier. So we've got Someone who wants a tentacle, a roasted tentacle, which is actually shouldn't be at the start of the game. That's too difficult. Someone who wants a roast chicken and someone who wants a carrot. So we'll do the vegetable farm first. Go in here. Okay. Carrots galore. If there were any snails, I would want to get them out of here, but they can't actually eat yet. So that's how they work mechanically. You throw stuff at them. They give you some coins. That goes in your inventory for upgrades between runs, but you have to finish the level and bank it. And you get a star for serving them. And the stars, you don't need to bank. They just automatically go up. So the stars are like a measure of your progress through the game. Oh, hang on. I just realized. Sorry, I've just been streaming with the edge of the screen cut off. One sec. What's going on here? Cutting off the edge of the capture. Can't see the top right of the... Where is the corner of the screen? There it is. Okay. Yeah, so the stars at the top right, that's eventually going to be like a sort of blue Facebook thumbs up icon, just to make it very clear what it is. It's kind of your reviews. So in terms of the diners, there will be more stuff when you interact with them. There will probably be a little bit more zooming. Yeah, the new... So this is eventually going to be... I mean, Gleb, I downloaded your video and showed it at the start of the stream. But this is now 3 cards that appear, and you select one and it will fly in and everything. It's just a lot clearer what's going on. And then as you kind of progress through the game, you get a sense of, oh, I need a chicken. Where would I get that from? If I spawn the abattoir, that will have... The abattoir will have like a chest in that might have it's like a crate of meat that I could use there. Or I might deliberately go looking for a bat, because when the bats are dead, they turn into a chicken. So the guy that wants a chicken, I just go whack one of them. I get a chicken. But now, oh, I need to roast that somewhere, so I need to look for a campfire. So you've got a couple of slightly different cooking methods. Like the roast things, you need to campfire them. And so what you're seeing now is like the deck is way too big for me at this stage, because I've got loads of stuff in it that shouldn't be in the start of the game. So I'm struggling to find a campsite, which is where I would get a campfire. There is a campfire there, but it's drawing into the wrong layer, which I will fix in a minute. So I come over here, I cook my chicken. While I'm there, I can do some other stuff, like break this. You got some other cooking methods, like here we've got the machine that makes ground meat that you use to make burgers and meatballs and stuff. I can automate that by putting a bomb on the spring. And then we've got like a blob of ground meat that I can use for another meal, but no one wants that right now, so we'll leave it. Yeah, that's what you're usually doing. And then some of the food has different properties, like the spinach you can use as a Zelda floaty leaf. Oh yeah, thanks, Gleb. I keep forgetting about audio groups. That gets me the worst when it's music and there's just a new piece of music and I've got the music turned down and it comes on anyway. And I'm like, what's going on? Okay, I'm going to fix a couple of things that I've seen here just before I forget them. Cooking data. That roast tentacle shouldn't be showing up at the start of the game, so I'll just fix that now. what's it called? Roast Kraken. That shouldn't be showing up right at the start. That should be mid-game until the end of the game. So in this data set, this is like deciding, this is kind of where the difficulty of the game is balanced, really, because we're going, okay, fruit, that's really easy because that you just need to find it and give it to the guy. So that can show up at the start of the game as something people want. But towards the middle of the game, when you've got what's mid-stars. Mid-stars is, once you've got 30 stars, you'll never get a customer again that's just like, I want a piece of fruit. Because that's basically my game's tutorial, is earlier on in the game, you'll get asked for types of food that someone wouldn't come to a restaurant for. They wouldn't just go, I would like a carrot, please. But the early part of the game does that while you're learning. And this is basically how the tutorial is baked into the difficulty scaling of the game. So at the start of the game, most of your customers won't even need you to cook something. They'll just be like, I want a piece of fruit from a tree. And then as it progresses, you will need more. Like more strange ways of getting things and combining them and stuff, which is kind of how the room drafting interacts with the cooking theme, really, is that everything is based around knowing where you can get certain things and knowing which things are more certain and stuff like that, and learning that over time. Yeah, I will do the sound effect. I'm going to put a note to myself about the sound effect audio groups, because I'm not going to do that now because that will be boring to watch, but I will put it on my to-do list. Why is it so zoomed out? I don't know, it feels right, but we will make a We'll make a version that is more default zoomed in and have that as an option in the menu for like things like people playing on Steam Deck. But playing this on a larger screen, this is the right size. You know, I'm working in 24 by 24 pixel art because that's what I started in. But it is a game where you need to see a lot of the context around you to be able to play the game. Otherwise, it's not really fun. So we will make a mode where you can have it kind of slightly more zoomed in by default, but that will be like a little tick box setting in the menu, and ideally if someone plays this on a Steam Deck or whatever, it will automatically click to that. What am I trying to do now? Completely forgot. We should do Garlock next. Oh, the other thing I want to do just to make these look a little bit more... Make it so that the snails like run away a little bit after they turn into slugs. They speed up. Yeah, we'll do Garlock next. Okay, let me just push some of these things. Okay, so I haven't had much luck with the flying characters so far, so maybe we should go to the egg bat first and see what the egg bat is doing. So they're supposed to have like a dive behavior that makes them attack, but they're not very good at doing that, right? So they have this ability called Mob Flyer Seek Dive Target, and what does that do? Every 3 seconds, look 12 tiles downwards with a horizontal range of 1. When hurt, don't know what that does. Min distance, I guess. That stops them from diving if they're too close to you already. Item variable, item var minimum. Don't know what those things mean. Oh, I think what I was trying to do is basically, if they have a target, they just sort of like zoom towards it and they don't really care about collision. Which could be a bit janky, but... Because this is just supposed to set the target. It's not supposed to actually act on it. So let's do a debug here. So, interesting. Okay. So let's get the egg bat working before we move on to Garlock, because they're both flying mobs and they need to do some similar stuff, but I've already got one here that's broken, so rather than like get carried away, let's see if this ever actually gets a target, because you can tell this is an old sprite because it has a like harsh black outline, which I don't do in most of the stuff in the game anymore. I do still like these bats though, these eyeless bats. But the idea is that these come out of eggs, and the eggs are one of the cooking ingredients as well. And trying to sort of treat it so that every egg in the game is basically the same thing in terms of being an ingredient, but you have eggs that spawn different creatures. There might be a little bit of a clash there with how the cauldron works, but I'll work it out. Because the cauldron works on the sprite of the object. Might just make it so that when an egg touches the cauldron, it kind of becomes a generic egg or something. We'll work it out. Okay, so let's spawn some bats. Egg bat, egg bat, egg bat. Okay, debug text is saying blah. They're flying around. They're doing like a reasonably good job of like doing a generic flying thing. And okay, there's some old legacy code in Object Player for colliding with egg bats, and it's based on taking damage if we hit an egg bat that is doing the biting thing, which isn't really how we should do that. We should do it with hurt boxes and stuff so that they can hurt other things, because we want them to be able to like bite other characters other than the player. Although I might put that in as like a failsafe as well. Okay, so we're doing if has target. Let's check that has target actually works as well so that we're not misdiagnosing things. Macro. If has target, target is not equal to no one. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so we need to go into further down here. Mob type scare, mob damage. This is one of my favorite functions recently. This is like, this allows a mob to find out if, no, actually, this allows an event from any object to pick all of the local instances of a certain mob and make them like appear to fly away. So, for example, the rats are currently scared if you kill a rat, if you set off a bomb, or if you like whack the cauldron with your hammer and make it go ding ding ding, the rats all go and like jump away. And that's like I can replicate that with basically any mob. It will do its scared noise and jump away from the source of the fear. But it only works on rats at the moment. Okay, mob flyers seek dive target. This will become a general mob behavior called fly. Okay, apparently it will. E.g. birds eating crops, that's a behavior we eventually want to be able to do. If age modulo frequency seconds is 0 and invulnerability is less than or equal to 0, or when hurt is true. Okay, so when hurt is basically, can I still do this if I've just been whacked? That's funny. Bar target is none. B range is, so we're converting this integer into itself times by the tile size so that I don't have to put the pixel amount up here. I put the tile amount. targets. We create a collision rectangle which starts at the left minus the H range, goes to the bottom of the character, which is the top of the triangle, top of the rectangle, sorry. Then the right plus the H range, and then the bottom plus the V range. That all looks right. So we're creating a target list. Let me just check that collision rectangle works the way I think it does. It returns the first result found. That's not what we want. We want collision rectangle list, I think. That's why we're doing something wrong here. Okay, so collision rectangle list needs the corners of the rectangle, which we've already got. It needs item parent. Good. Yeah. List. And then the list is targets, which is... Okay, so this will be actually num. This will be number instead. So var targets equals yes list create, and then that should be num instead of targets. I think. Don't know about ordered. Okay. And then, so that's finding every item. That's not even going to search for the player right now. So all of the mobs are technically items. So this will detect any mob, but it won't detect the player because the player isn't an item. So we should probably have another thing up here, which is like target player. We'll put that to true by default. And then say if target player equals true, then if I would do check the same rectangle again for the player. How do you have so much code without getting confused? I don't. I do get confused. That's why people write comments and stuff. Precise, false, not me, true. Okay, and then we would push. So if target player is true and we can find the player in that collision rectangle, then we would go ds list add. Actually, maybe we want to prioritize the player as well. Let's just allow the player to be like a random thing. That's the list ID. I mean, a lot of confidence in things is about managing uncertainty and managing discomfort, right? So I think when you're new to something, you get the impression that people that are like more experienced at it are just better at it, in the sense that they like know more stuff and they have it all in their head. And that's true to an extent. Like but you never stop needing to like organize things or look things up. So the big kind of soft skill with programming or anything else, using any piece of software really, is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and confused and stuff, and then sort of understanding that everything will reach a point where you need to organize it better. And that's the same Let me just quickly show you a song in my FL Studio. Because it's the same principle as code, really. It's not exactly the same in terms of how it's expressed. So just going to open up a song that I've been working on in FL Studio. I won't be able to play it because of the way that the sound card works. But look at the way that it's organized. And then you kind of realize that as you're developing your technical skills on working on something, you're also developing your organizational skills. And you tend to have a push and pull with these things of like, you know, I do it with my video editing as well. Every so often I'm like, I've been doing this thing for so long and I'm sure there is a shortcut for the thing that I want to learn to do, but I haven't trained myself in it. And then I learn it and I'm like, wow, I've wasted days of time doing things this way and never learning that shortcut. And it's the same thing. You know, it's just with code and commenting, you're making your own shortcut. So one of the things I do with music to organize is these color codings let me know what instrument everything is, right? So whenever I have a bass guitar in a mix, it's dark blue or purpley blue. And whenever I have a keyboard, it's like sky blue. And my guitars are usually green. My voice is nearly always pink. I use different shades of pink. Like the lead vocal is like cerise, and then the pastel pinks are the backing vocals in their area. And then I use like the yellow, orange, and red for different drum parts, and like yellows for shakers, red for kick drums, stuff like that. It's the same thing. You learn your own little habits that gradually help you to organize things. And that's not specific to code, although there are like heuristics for code that you can learn that will make things easier, but I'm not very good at using them. And part of that is because a lot of them are from software engineering and they don't really apply in a context where you're trying to do lots of experimental stuff, which games is, you know, there's messy stages where you just need to do things in a messy way. Okay, so now we have a list of potential targets. We should probably remove items from it which this mob doesn't attack /E. Okay. And then we go through a loop. I don't really understand how this works. Set which instance to check. Okay, we check. We're going into the targets array. Ah, I see. So if I go back to the egg bat and I go into create, I created a thing called prey. Oh, it's not here. That's why it wasn't doing anything, probably. So object underscore player. Object underscore snail, I guess, or mob underscore snail, object underscore mob underscore rat, object underscore mob underscore beetle. Yeah, they're all the things that this will try and eat for now, which we didn't actually have in place before. Okay, this function is disgustingly long and probably not the best way of doing this thing, but if we can just get it to a point where it does something loosely resembling what we want it to, then we can improve it from there. Okay. Right, so if the prey array contains the object instance of the object index of the instance that we're checking from the list. Now, something I'm slightly worried about is this is going to save. Ah. Yeah, I see. Okay. So what we actually want to do here is do dslist add and put that in the second argument there. And then if the player is in that rectangle, it will get added to targets. And if it's not, it will add no one to targets, which I think is okay, I guess. So we check if we go through the list of the array of targets. We check if it's on the prey array. And we don't need these here. And then we check if there is a collision with the solid between this and that, which creates a kind of little bit of a line of sight thing. And if there's not, then we do add target. That should be not equals. So if the instance is not equals no one, do this other thing, which is add target. I feel like I must have stopped working on this halfway through a session because it's that I don't understand how this plays into the rest of this. Else. Ah, I see. Okay. I think what we want to do here is do target one. I think I'm maybe overcomplicating this. I think I probably just want to go, okay, is there something here? And then if there... Let's simplify this for a moment, because all we need is the illusion of what we want. We don't need it to be super smart. So let's just do that for now, because then if it detects anything that... Okay. Simplify this right down. Get like the most basic version of it working, and then worry about refining it later on. I think I just overcomplicated my first try at it. So we don't even need the target saved. We just want it to go, is there something here I'm trying to eat? And then zoom down if there is. Get rid of that. Don't need that anymore. I think this is where, like, reading books like the Derek Hughes Spelunky book or articles like that are very helpful, where they give examples of how they did stuff, because, like, the shopkeeper in Spelunky is just a little guy, and, like, when he appears to be angry and trying to kill you, he is just jumping around in quite a random way. It's not totally random, it does respond to the player, but the way it responds to the player is nowhere near as intelligent as you might think it is. What's going on there? Oh, I've got a bracket in the wrong place somewhere, I think. Tiresome. No, okay, just had an extra bracket I didn't need. Because the actual floating around behavior is going to be the same for Garlock and for the bat, but the bat needs to like go and dive when it sees something it wants to eat, and Garlock needs to see something it wants to attack and then drop bombs. Okay. And then maybe I'll play around with whether or not they attack, diners. Okay. Oh. Foolish. Getting my arrays and lists mixed up. Classic. Crashing at 90. 990, okay. Right, let's simplify this right down for now and just make them only care about the player. This just returns, what does this returns the instance, doesn't it? How do I do that? Okay. So check this rectangle for object player. There can only be one object player. If it's not none, then do this thing. So maybe what would be better would be to have like 3 things it checks for, loop through checking a rectangle for one of those things. If there is one of those things, set a flag that is like, I'm going to dive now, early out of all the other checks if the I'm going to dive now flag is triggered. And then when I'm going to dive now is triggered, it just kind of zooms straight down. I think that might be the best way of doing this. So I'm just going to go back and take out all of this for now. I always do this. I over-engineer the thing the first time I do it before I even really know what I need it to do. And what I really need it to do first is just like do the most simple cartoonish version of the thing. And then work out how to make it more sophisticated later on. And then maybe we do a sound here of if sprite index is not equal to sprite attack, then we play a sound and change to the attack sprite. So sound at send attack. They have a little attack sound that they have saved at the start when they're spawned, I think. Can't remember. So if we see the player in that rectangle, and this doesn't do a line of sight check yet, which we can add in later, then we check if we're doing the attack sprite. If we're not doing the attack sprite, then we do our zoom downwards, we change to the attack sprite, we play sound underscore attack, whatever that is, which we might have to set manually. Again, there's only going to be a couple of creatures that have this behavior, so I think that's okay. I'll just put a blip as the attack sound for now, so it's easy for us to understand. And then the way that this naming convention works is if we've got sprite mob eggbat, and that's like the basic sprite for something, then it will automatically find attack and assign that to SPR underscore attack for that mob, which has made my life a lot, it's much quicker. Let's see if that works. They're not going to do any damage yet, but there's a question of like, when a character is in its attack sprite, how do I handle the hurt boxes? Does it need to generate a little one every frame and just move it? Or is there something smarter I want to do? So basically, with those guys, it should really be a case of if the character touches them and they've got their mouth open, then they hurt you, you know? But we do want the opportunity for those to be able to attack other things. Okay. And then maybe we do something that says, okay, if this is attacking, then its horizontal speed is always set to 0, so it can't. So it kind of gives the impression that it's diving. Okay. So let's go back and see if we can get that to do some more stuff. We don't need any of this. We'll do some bat specific attacking. If sprite index equals sprite underscore attack, then B speed equals clamp B speed 0.4, right? So they can't fly upwards when they are attacking, and their H speed will always get set to 0 when they're attacking. If sprite index equals sprite attack. Okay. Just hack in the basic stuff we want. I mean, I could do a... I'm just bumping back here. Matt said, have you used GML scripts to the website? There's tons of super neat functions there. I used one that intercepts the course between two objects using their speed. Well, that does sound pretty helpful. Yeah, I think that's the sort of thing where I would need to just like browse through it and look at it and then be like, is there anything here that I can use for more than one thing in my game, and then copy the patterns. I'm not very good at doing that. I tend to be a sort of like cross the bridge when we get to it type person. If really, I never used to have this problem when I didn't put double equals on my comparators. Everyone moaned at me to do things the proper way. And now I put them in my setters as well. To be fair, a lot of this sloppiness is just because I probably only do about 2 or 3 sessions a week, so the level of practice is just not there to be super fluent. Okay. Egg bat. Egg bat. Egg bat. Right, so they don't have line of sight. They will try and attack me through the floor. That one, I think having a situation where I need to like jump around and whack these guys to stop them eating the diners would be quite funny. I think hurt player doesn't check if you're invincible, which is not good. So I'm glad we just caught that. Yeah. Huh. Player damage. Where are you, player damage? If player.invincible, return. Yeah, the Game Maker Discord is just super, super great. Like, my engine preference usually just comes down to what have I personally been able to learn quickest, you know? I think the reason why I like Game Maker and why I might also like Godot is because they are made, the languages are made specifically for games. And a big stumbling block I always had with like using a game engine that used C or Java or something was like, there's loads of terminology or just particular quirks of how things are named that are very computer sciencey and not for games. And whereas GML is like everything is named what it should be in a game engine, you know? But I also, yeah, I think that's probably also what makes those kind of communities a bit different, because I feel like those two engines have a larger percentage of people that are kind of hobbyists and are like not ashamed of being hobbyists. Ah, I see. What's going on there? Ah, because we don't have like a break between when the thing attacks and when it can attack again. We're getting there though. Slightly better. Okay, so we need attack cooldown equals 3 seconds. And then we need to say attack. If attack cooldown is less than or equal to 0, then we do the dive target thing. And the rest of the time, we'll put a cooldown on them when they first spawn, so they won't attack you as soon as you enter a room as well. Maybe I'll put that on the parent mob so that any character that needs that is gonna. Just in case, if you enter a room and it's spawn bomb right near you, it won't automatically go for you. This music is so much what I need. I need a bit of this in this vibe in the game. I need a bit of jazz fusion in the game. There's something very oh. Okay, so I just trapped it in. It's just in that fungus somewhere behind it all. Right, when they're on the ground, they need to... When they're on the ground, they need to automatically fly back up. Okay, so this actually needs to go over here. Because otherwise this isn't doing anything. If attack cooldown is larger than... Or, yeah, if it's less than... 2... Well, if it's less than 1 second, then we force them back into the normal sprite. Don't need the prey list at the moment. Let's just keep this simple for now. All right. Right, so the attack cooldown gets set when they first dive. And also if it manages to hit the player. I think that probably makes sense, actually. And then whenever it's attacking, it can only move directly downwards, which gives the impression of it diving. Well, they're called bats, but it is a flying mouth, yeah. There's no attempt to make it actually look like a bat. Anything with wings in this game turns into a roast chicken. I'm trying to avoid real animals turning into... It's like, we have poultry, and we have a beast, which is like every other type of meat. Trying to avoid like the actual obvious thing. I might end up having like a chicken and a crow or something. I want to have a little bird that comes down and eats your crops if you don't go and whack it. Because I think that would be fun. Right. Egg bats, do your worst. They bias a little bit too much to flying towards the floor when they shouldn't. Love roasting a chicken by dropping a oil lamp on top of it. Okay, they're getting a little bit more respectful of, like, you know, not constantly attacking. Right, if they attack the player, we need to have sound. So maybe that... So does that already happen when you get hurt? I can't remember. Maybe we put a punch sound in or something. Oh, okay. Yeah, whenever it's... So whenever the character is... Let's do it somewhere here. Right, so... keep away from the ground unless attacking. Okay, so if I'm on my move sprite and I'm too close to the ground, I will automatically go back up. So the order of stuff in these, because the inheritance is a little bit jank, but basically everything in the event inherited bit is going to be all of the stuff that actually moves the character based on its speed. So I have to put the setters above it, and then any of the kind of limiters like these clamps have to go beneath it. If we're doing moves, if we're not in the attack sprite, and collision rectangle. So we're going to look for blocks in a rectangle and then go B speed minus equal 4 if might as well do it this way. Make it into one line? We can. B box left, B box bottom. Let's do it at the top just to be on the safe side. B box right and B box bottom plus tile size times 3. Because we want them to like try and stay out of range so that it's quite hard to like jump around and just whack them out of the sky. That will make it feel like they have some sort of self-preservation instinct, right? Right, we're checking for blocks. True, false. So if there's no block detected in this collision check and we're on the move sprite, then our vertical speed will get will be just decremented by 1, and then any speed clamps can happen after that. Beatus, I think the answer to those sorts of questions is like, first, what can you do, right? Are you capable of doing all that stuff and making it work, building all the menus, save systems, stuff like that? And then the other thing is like, what would you find exciting? Because if you can't judge your game ideas based on like some sort of taste that you have about what you prefer to experience in games, then you probably need to play more games. I know that's frustrating because it's time consuming, but you know, no one should be working in a medium or a genre that they're not invested in and wouldn't just like consume for fun if they weren't making something, you know. Right, so that should keep them away from the ground and give them more the impression of something that doesn't want to come close to the ground and get killed, but occasionally swoops to try and munch someone. And they should be reasonably easy to dodge because once they've detected and gone for the attack, they don't actually remember what they're attacking. They just go directly downwards and they stop moving horizontally when they're swooping. I don't believe there's ever been any change in how popular incrementals are. I think a lot of the people commenting and just don't understand the difference between the popularity of like skill-based games and casual games. So they think it's surprising that people like these casual games, which is what incrementals are. And yeah. Yeah, that's much closer to the behavior you'd expect to see from those guys if you saw them in a video game, right? They're flying around, they're doing their own thing, they're staying up in the air mostly, and then they attack, they come down, and then they go back up again. It's a lot better, right? I think some of the stuff that turns them round isn't doing much sometimes. I think if they stop moving horizontally, they struggle to start moving horizontally again. Okay. Right, we know that the attack sound is triggering, so I can take off that annoying sound. Let's do a live sound recording, guys. It's time. It's been a while since I added a sound to the game in a stream. I do love a bit of guano. Guano Gourmet. Let's try this. Is that going in the right mic? That doesn't seem like it's the right mic. Yeah, it is. Put that down. Save. Just put that somewhere random to start off with. Put it in downloads. And then when I import it, I'll name it properly. Okay, so sound. So when I have sound effect types that trigger a lot, you can see these sound grinder, sound rat. I create like several sound effects of the same thing. And then I choose one randomly and repitch it. And there's usually some layering and stuff. But these guys, we're not going to hear them very often. So we can start off with one little sound effect. Where did I save it? Downloads. I don't think it's saved properly. Let me try again. Export audio. Else. Downloads. It's because I didn't click export, I don't think. There we go. Pop that in there. Into the mobs folder. Sound effects from mobs. Sound underscore mob hiss. Let's call it. I don't just call it bat hiss. I mean, it might be all I'm using it for now. And then let's put it on the, there we go. And then we'll go back to our bat. And set that as the sound effect for that. Turn that debug text off. And then just want to go in here and see max fly v speed. Okay, so there's some like stuff here that sets clamps the v speed, but down here, if it's attacking, we can make it go higher than that. Okay, that makes sense. I think we might need to move this back here to get this to work properly. Okay. And then go back here, maximum fly. Where's all that stuff? Dive speed. Put the music back on. Sorry about that. Just needed to record a realistic bat monster. Early dinner for Connor. I need to go soon. I need to take my kids to an art club. Gonna text him. Hi guys, we need to leave in about 15 or 20 minutes. I'll stop streaming soon. I'll stop screaming soon. Ah! Right. Give me that bat. Maybe if they touch the ground, they need to... When they touch a block, they need to automatically stop attacking. They've got some vibes. I'm going to redraw them. They look terrible, but they're behaving the way I would expect. Okay, let's make them so they can dive faster. Probably need to also... So, right, if we are too close to the ground, that should also add... It should also make it so they can't attack when they're much too close to the ground. And... And then when they're attacking, if they hit a block, they will go back to the move sprite. And then the next frame around, all of this will come back into play. Maybe that might improve it a little bit. So these will be flying around, laying eggs, hatching out of eggs. They will eat other mobs that are like smaller, meat-based mobs. I might make it so that they attack diners, but I don't know how. I think that would be funny, but I'm trying to follow, is it funny to fail this way? Has been like a big, like, kind of easy way of making everything in the game sort of coherent. It's my design pillar, basically, you know, like, we're making a game that is kind of skill-based, but also quite chaotic with a lot of randomness in. Is it funny to die this way? That's kind of the guiding thing with a lot of the decisions in this game. So, might be funny to have them attack diners. Might be just too annoying. It might be good to have a relic that is like the flame hammer that just automatically cooks them when you hit them. So you just get a roast chicken out of them straight away. The Streets of Rage weapon. Yeah, there's something that's getting them like horizontally locked after they've done an attack. I think the dive could even be like twice that fast almost. So it's at 7 now, so I'm going to turn it up to 12. And then I'm just going to see what's happening with the V speed, with the H speed limiting. Something is happening with H speed limiting. It is fine there. I think they have mob wander and turn. It happens every half frame. And maybe we just want to make that. We don't care about has target anymore. Every 3 seconds have, or every, let's do every 1 second have a 20% chance to turn. And then I think we can get rid of a lot of this actually. Because we don't really care about having a target. That's not... They just identify a potential target in a split second, dive, and then from that point they've lost all memory of what they were doing, which I think is fine for what we're trying to model here. Like at the moment the player is hurt not through a hurt box, so I might want to tweak that. I think it depends what we want the kind of range of what these guys can interact with to be. It might be cool if they can like dive down and smash boxes and stuff for you, I guess. Right. Egg bat. Give me them egg bats. Give me them lovely egg bats. There's so many of them. Wow. Still don't seem to be moving as fast as I... Maybe there's some... Okay, let's see what's happening in... What's happening in the parent mob? Is there anything to do with... There's no... Right, so we're going to go to the item parent and just see if there's any limiting there. Ah. I think that's wrong. I think maybe I can just make that higher for everything. Let's just see what happens. Not my code. This is like someone else's ancient code. Yeah, I mean, just to answer that question that came up in the chat a minute ago, whenever you have a question that is like, can someone make a commercial game in X? You know, whatever it is, whether it's, you know, Love or RPG Maker or whatever it is, doesn't matter. The answer is like, there are games out there that have done that. Like, how many of them are there? And what were the constraints that that engine put on that game, you know? Right, these guys still aren't eating the food that they should be eating, but we'll fix that later. Eggbat, do you have a... Get you faster now? They still don't seem to dive as quickly as I'd like them to. I throw a carrot at you. Oh, I killed it with the carrot. I didn't even know a carrot was heavy enough to do that. Yeah, I think if I can make these eat the rats, that's going to be fun as well, because... Whoa. Oh, no, because they're doing the clamping on themselves, aren't they? I just remembered. Right, I'm going to finish this off, and then I'm going to push, and we're done for the day for now. Okay. What we want is when they're attacking, they can't go back up. I never want a bat with its mouth open to be flying upwards. It's only ever flying down. So we're using the current sprite to decide whether the thing should look like it can hurt you or not. And if it's bearing down on you and attacking you, then that's when it can damage you. And maybe with the player, to make that interaction feel good, we probably want to check some other stuff. Like if the player is jumping on the head of the bat, then it shouldn't take damage then either. If I hold down the run button, it keeps creating the particles on the thing I'm standing on. That's funny. I need to check why it's doing this. Occasionally the space under the door will go. And I know I need to fix it, but I can't really be bothered to work out why it's happening. This guy. Right. Cool. Just gonna go into the mob behaviors again, make their sound effect a little bit. I'm going to make it like half the volume of that because that could get very irritating very quickly. Turn their cooldown up a little bit. Yeah, I will try and make that a bit better later on. Let's just have a look at what's going on with this guy. Like, all of this stuff, I can simplify it by just going, hey... I mean, I've made it as simple as I could. Right, so we find a food. I know this works because I got it from somewhere else. If the food's not no one and the food is not held, then if the liked foods correct array contains the object index of the food, then destroy the food. Let's just to debug this, I'm gonna just make it so they're always hungry. Vegetable farm. Oh no. Yeah, there's something else going wrong there because even if I make them permanently hungry, they're still not eating stuff. So I need to I'll come back to that at a later time. But I think making the snails into pests that can eat your vegetables is great, because then we have snails both as a problem to deal with and as something you might want to save for later, right? Because if I know I might need to cook an escargot later on, or it's getting out, making it hard to pick him up. If I know I might need to cook one of these guys, I need to make the highlight a little bit more lenient with when you can pick it up. If I know I might need to cook one of these guys, I don't necessarily want to smash them as soon as I see them eating my vegetables, so I might have to take them away to another room and leave them there so that I can get them later. I'll go, oh, here's my snail farm. I put my snails in there. You think having ways that they can be a resource and a complication is good. Although I didn't ever want this to be just like, you know, Battle Chef Brigade, you kill the monsters to get the crafting ingredients and then that's it. You know, we've got stuff like, for example, the ways you get cheese in this game are very strange. There's going to be a room that is like a moon of cheese that you blow up with bombs in order to get cheese. But I've also, just to give you an example, right, one of the relics that I've just unlocked the power of is going to be like a blue cheese themed relic that lets milk turn these fungal blocks into cheese blocks. So if I just spawn myself a bottle of milk and then throw it down that way, so that allows milk to turn fungus into cheese. And then if I get a bomb, anywhere I can light my bomb. Oh man, it's gonna take me too long to get back. I'll put this here. I'll go and get the torch. I've got a relic there that's just smashing jars for me as well. I'll blow up that. Then we'll see some cheese. Loads of cheese. And say, hello rats, would you like some cheese? Apparently, if you throw cheese at rats, it kills them. They are quite large pieces of cheese, though, to be fair. So. Look, guys. I understand I just killed your friends, but they didn't get out of the way of the big piece of cheese, so... Yeah, there's definitely too many objects in this game that work as projectiles when you wouldn't expect them to be. Like, I love being able to throw jars and crates at stuff and take enemies out that way. That's really fun, but I don't think a carrot should do a damage, you know? Even on a little rat. Still getting some layer spawning issues with characters showing up behind the walls and stuff, but also stuff I haven't spent ages trying to debug or work out if it's like a content problem from the level design or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I'm probably gonna have a special interaction with feeding cheese to rats, but I'm not sure what it is yet. Right, I need to go, but thank you all for joining today. And may your meals not contain any eyeless bat creatures. whatever you're eating today. Good to see you all. Thanks for dropping in. Let's blow up the Kraken Mama just to celebrate a good stream. I need a torch. Don't make me have to cheat. Ah, delicious. An eyeball. Hey guys, you want this eyeball? It's delicious. Why don't you want the tasty eyeball? I don't think it's even classified as food. The spawn search. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting about that. Right, thank you for dropping in today. Thanks for your help as well, and I'll see you all soon.